So, good morning, everyone. We are starting today with our new webinar. This today about dynamic job plans. Another part of the MACS webinars we are doing around the subjects of IBM Maximo and IBM Control Desk. And well, I said today about dynamic job plans. First of all, let's take a quick look at the agenda. About dynamic job plans. First of all, a quick view into what it is and what you can do with it. Second, then the configuration to enable dynamic job plans. So what do you need to set up before you have the functionality available? And third, dynamic job plans functionality, a walkthrough basically the applications and functionalities which are new in IBM Maximo around this subject. So first, about dynamic job plans. So it's dynamic job plans, a new functionality from the latest version at the moment of IBM Maximo, which is 7.6.1.1. And it basically adds functionality in the job plans application, where you can create job plans that dynamically calculate work resource requirements based on the scope of work. So this could be useful, for example, if you have to work with linear assets like pipelines, roads, and tracks, and all of that. So what you can do with it is that you can allocate labor, materials, tools, and also services. You don't have to do them all four, of course, but you have the possibility to work with that. And you can allocate them based on variable quantities and duration. So, for example, rail track maintenance is done in spans of varying length. Therefore, resource requirements for maintaining the rails can fluctuate based on the length of the repair. So, the amount of labor, tools, materials, and services varies, and the time to complete the work varies. So, and the key to quickly sum up this slide is that you can create a dynamic job plan to define the work unit or maintenance unit, for example, for linear assets. And the unit of work can be a distance, such as miles or kilometers, for nonlinear assets, and a unit of work is generally a quantity for those. To make it a little bit more graphically, I have add this to the presentation. And first of all, here's what you see. A static, basically the job plan as it has been created for one unit of work, which is 1 kilometer, which needs one labor for 20 minutes of work. But if I then go a little bit further, you can see on the work order, you have the possibility with this same dynamic job plan in this case to enlarge that amount of unit of work to set it to 4 kilometers. And what it will do is it will use a quite simple formula to calculate the amount of labor necessary based on the total work units. In this case, 4 kilometer. So for 1 kilometer, it will be 20 minutes. And with the formula, it will come up to 80 minutes of labor because the 4 kilometers just need more amount of work. And if I then go to the last page of this, then you can see the different possibilities that you have here. So a job plan resource can be scaled proportionally based on the scope of work. And labor and tools can be scaled by quantity or duration or both. So that are the possibilities you have there. And that goes basically by a couple of calculation methods. The first one, of course, is the standard Maximo option, which is static. Job plan, quantity / duration applied directly to the work order. So that is what Maximo does, as long as we know it, of course. But then we have the dynamic job plan functionality, which adds the other two calculation methods, which is at first proportional. So you can calculate the work order, quantity or duration by dividing the quantity or duration on the job plan by the job plan work units multiplier for a given work order. So that's what we basically did above, is that you can say, okay, I divide it by 1 or by 4. And then you also have a level calculation method. So you can select the quantity duration based on a predefined threshold. I will come back to that later also in a slide because this is also where a new application comes into IBM Maximo 4. So that was a little bit about dynamic job plans. A quick intro about what it is and what it does. You can go over it, of course, later on in your own time. To go it in more detail and read all about it. I want to go further now with the configuration to enable dynamic job plans, because when you have Maximo 7611 installed, you need to do some things before the functionality is actually enabled. Now I'm just walking through this based on those screenshots. And what we first need to do is within the system properties application, where you can go to by system configuration module, platform configuration, and then all on the top you can see system properties. What we need to do is enable the dynamic job plan system property. So if I go to the next slide, you will see that I filtered out the dynamic job plan system property, and I've set the current value to 1 instead of the standard value 0. So you can see here Maximo default is 0, but you want to have that at 1 because that's what it enables. It enables then the functionality. You can do a live refresh here. So you just change the current value to 1, and then you perform a live refresh, and basically you're done here. And then there is one thing left you need to do. You need also to grant edit rights for dynamic job plans, and that's to be done in the organizations application. So there you go to administration, go to organizations, and open the organization you have in your Maximo system. And on that organization where you want it, you go to the action menu here above, and you open it, and you go to work order options and then edit rules. You click on that, and when you have opened the edit rules functionality, then you want to enable or actually activate or check the checkboxes under the dynamic job plan column to make possible to activate this functionality. So that was a little bit what you need to do about configure or enable the functionality in your Maximo system. And the last point in the webinar, I want to go through the functionality within the applications, which has been added in the applications. So most of it will be in the job plan application, but also we have a new application as announced a couple of minutes ago. So I will also go through that one. So first of all, when we open the job plans application, we did the steps before. So we enabled the functionality. We will see a new section basically, and which is called the dynamic job plan information. So this is on the first tab of the job plan, and there you basically can set the work unit which you want to use for a default work unit for this job plan, for this dynamic job plan. So in this case, I've chosen for, you can see it here on the top, a forklift tire replacement plus inspection. And I've chosen to set, okay, for default, I want to have one work unit. So it's about one forklift, and the standard calculation method is proportional. If I go then a little bit down below, there we also have the checkbox is dynamic, which is of course checkable when you just created the dynamic job plan, when you created the job plan and you make it a dynamic job plan basically by checking this checkbox. And then if we go further, we see a lot of familiar parts, of course, where you can see the job plan tasks. And also down below there, you can see the different labor, materials, services, and tools which are needed to perform this work. So here on the right side, we can see the calculation method for, at first, the labor which is necessary for this work. So we can see we have for the three tasks, which there are, we have labor setup, two mechanics and one inspector, and I've set the two mechanics to have a proportional calculation method and the inspector, I've set it to a level calculation method. And later on, I will, of course, show what it will do in case of the dynamic job plan functionality. So if I go to the next slide, what we have is a new functionality also to First of all, I have the materials tab also. So next to the labor, you can also, of course, use it in the materials tab. And here I've said basically for this work, for this job plan, this inspection, I want to have at least one tire necessary or ready at least to maybe change it when it's necessary on this forklift. So I've also added one tire here with a calculation method of proportional. And what I was talking about a little bit earlier is that in the action menu, we've got now an action when it is a dynamic job plan to simulate the dynamic job plan. We can see it on top here. So if you open the action menu and you click on simulate dynamic job plan, you will get this dialog. And this dialog is giving you the possibility to simulate with the amount of work units what you have set up at the moment in the dynamic job plan. So we can see now top left that this job plan in default has a duration of 2.5 hours, and that is only for one work unit. So here we can see also the same details as we saw in the job plan itself. And we can a little bit change the work unit here and then simulate to see what it does with the labor and the materials, in this case, that I've set up. So let's take a look at that. I've now changed the work unit from 1 to 8. And then we directly can see that the total duration of the work would be 20 hours. And when it's also, if you see down below here, you can see that now 4 hours of this mechanic is necessary. We have 8 hours of this mechanic necessary on labor, and the inspector, which has a level calculation method, only needs also 4 hours of work to be done on labor hours. So now, based on this work unit, the durations in this case for the labor has changed according to my setup of my dynamic job plan. I come later back to the fact why the inspector only has 4 hours of labor now, because it has a different calculation method. And I will come there in the next slide. And that's where also the new resource levels management application comes into life, because this is this application is necessary for that level calculation method. And what we basically do here is that based on this amount of work units, you can set, okay, I have a separate, I have some thresholds set up for specific work units. So in this case, for when the work unit is between 0 and 2, I only have 1 hour for this case. For the forklift tire inspection, I only need 1 hour of labor. But when I am in between 3 and 4, I need 2 hours. And when I have between 7 and 8, in this case I had between 7 and 8, it will give me, okay, then you need 4 hours of labor for this case. So this is how the level calculation method works. And this is basically done by thresholds that can be set up before working with it in the dynamic job plan. So if we go a little bit further, and we can also see, of course, that in the work order tracking application, certain different functionalities have been added to the work order tracking application to work, of course, with this dynamic job plan. So at first, we can see on the list screen of the work order tracking application that we have the new checkbox, which is telling me, okay, it's a dynamic, well, you could say now dynamic work order, but of course it's saying that this work order is based on a dynamic job plan. And also you can see that the dynamic job plan is applied where it says yes. So that's at first on the list view of the application. And if I go a little bit further, then we can also see on this particular work order, of course, again, about the forklift, that we also have in the work order tracking application, we also have this simulate dynamic job plan action in the action menu. So directly from the work order, you have the possibility to click also on this option. And you can see now for this work order, I've set it up this way that the default job plan, so the job plan as it's set up by default has been applied. And here on the work order itself, I also can simulate and play with the work units that I need for my work. So in this case, again, you can see that this work order now has a total duration of 2.5 hours for that one work unit. And you can see down below here that we have labor hours, a quantity of 1 for all of them, and that for the inspector, I needed 1 hour of labor now. This one is half an hour of labor, and the one for task 10 would be also 1 hour of labor. But if I then change the work units again to 8 and simulate it with it, you can see the changes that has been occurred by this change. So again, we can see directly from the work order that the duration has changed from 2.5 hours to 20 hours. We can see here that the tasks, also the duration of the tasks, which is now calculated duration, has changed because I just simulated it at this moment. And we can also see that also down below here where the labor is, we can see that also those labor hours has been changed. Also the column calculated labor hours is here. So the quantity is still the same because there are no changes in that. So the calculated quantity column is empty, but we can see the change here in the calculated labor hours column. And if I'm satisfied with my simulation and I want to commit those modifications to the work order, I just simply click on the commit modifications button down below here. And when I do that, I click on commit modifications, then we see on the work order itself, we can see that the modifications has been put through to the work order. So in this case, I wanted to show first the labor before committing the dynamic job plan modifications. So this is basically the default state of the work order when the job plan is applied. And now I will show it on the next page how it is after it. So it has changed the estimated duration of my tasks. It has changed, of course, the regular hours, the rate, the line cost. Well, the rate hasn't been changed, but the line cost, of course, has been changed because of the more hours that of labor that is necessary. So we now can see that for those two mechanics, you can see the different regular hours and also the different regular hours for the inspector. And that is, again, based on that threshold, which has been set up in the resource level management application. And when I go also to the next one, I want to also to show it for materials, where here you can see it before committing the modifications. So here I have a quantity of 1 with this unit cost and this line cost for this particular material. And when I go to the next slide, we can see how it has been changed after committing the dynamic job plan modifications. So now all of a sudden I need 8 tires basically, and it all has a line cost of 1,360 euros in this case. So this is how it has been changed at the moment. And this is what I wanted to show, how it has been changed based on the simulation and modification I did on the work order itself. So not in the job plan application, but on the work order itself where the job plan is applied to. So to sum it a little bit up, and also to when we are working to the end of the webinar now, why dynamic job plans? Why should you bother using this functionality? Well, at first it is easy to set up. So the different steps that you have to go through to make the functionality active and enable it is quite easy. It is only, let's say 5 minutes of work, and you have activated the functionality in your own Maximo system. There's no need to duplicate job plans for only small changes, for example, labor or materials. So in the old, let's say in the default functionality of job plans, when you have a small change for that you say, okay, I also make a job plan for example, when I need 2 hours of this and when I have 4 materials of this, then you have to have an all a different job plan for that, so that you can use it on the work order. Now you can only have one job plan and just do it on the work order by changing the work units. Well, what it has as an effect is also a well-organized job plans library. So, of course, we don't get all those unnecessary, basically unnecessary duplicates of job plans for the same assets or the same group of assets. Because, yeah, we only have one or maybe two dynamic job plans where we can work or change the work units to get to those wanted level of work units and wanted level of labor hours, materials, services, and tools, etc. So being able to change the amount of work units directly from the work order is a massive plus also to me. So when you have the dynamic job plan set up properly, you can just work from the work order itself in the work order tracking application to change the amount of work units. So the labor hours, materials, etc. will change directly on the work order. So you will be able to work more efficiently and faster through the day with planning the work and making the right work orders with the right amounts of labor, materials, etc. So that are a couple of points I saw at least to consider working with dynamic job plans. So as one of the last slides, I also wanted to show the possibility to check go check out our job plan dynamic job plan blogs. So we have two of the blogs on our website. I've put the links into the presentation, and also the links would be under this video in YouTube. So take a look at them. They have a little bit more detailed information about dynamic job plans. And of course, if you have any questions, also maybe leave a comment on the website also, so we can help you further with that. But yeah, certainly take a look at those blogs. They're really good. And then the last slide before ending this webinar is I want to ask a little bit of attention also for our next webinar, which is not about IBM Maximo. It's about IBM Control Desk. And then I will show and I will go through the IBM Control Desk self-service portal and also the mobile app, the Control Desk mobile app. So I will go through those topics in our next webinar, which is Thursday, May 21, between 11 and 11:30 CEST. So thank you all for watching this webinar. Please leave a comment if you want in the section below, and also thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, to reach out to us, we will definitely help you, and we are happy to do that. So thank you all for watching again, and see you on our next webinar.